Hey everybody, it's Dan. Welcome back. This is going to be a quick one on the use of the term pile of shame that came up briefly in a video I did last year where I tried to assemble all the miniatures in my collection, and I made a valiant effort but did not ultimately succeed. And since then I've accumulated a lot more miniatures. I've bought a lot of miniatures. I've been very graciously given a lot of miniatures from different companies for reviews, and so it's just something that's been on my mind. And even more so as I was going through and organizing my paints, as you see in the footage in the background there, because I do this about every 6 months. I'll go through and just shake them all up, check them if they're not shaking to see if they're dried up, and just kind of generally organize by color and do a little inventory. And as I was going through, I found there were like 2 or 3 pots of paint that I don't remember buying. So obviously I did at some point, but I've never opened them, never used them, and I just found it funny that no one would ever refer to even like a large collection of paint like that as a pile of shame. It's something that we as a wargaming community like uniquely refer to unbuilt plastic miniatures as, and I find that very curious. So it's something I just wanted to share some thoughts on. And first of all, if this is a term that you use like maybe in jest or for fun, this isn't about you, right? Like I'm not the word police. I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life. This is specifically for those people, and I know there's a lot out there just based on the comments section of this small YouTube channel, that there are people that feel real guilt about their collections of unbuilt miniatures. So I wanted to share some thoughts I have, hopefully to reassure you a little bit, because we do this to ourselves, right? Like nobody weaponizes that term. Nobody looks at your collection and says, wow, what a pile of shame you have, right? This is something that we apply and assign value to our own collections. And we don't have to do that. And I think there's like 3 reasons why I would suggest you don't need to do this. And first and foremost, it's because no one else does. No other collecting community on the planet refers to their collections as piles of shame, right? I have a very good friend that has a pretty extensive comic book collection, and he buys bulk lots online, and he's got like just boxes and boxes of stuff that he hasn't gone through yet to catalog and organize. And he would never refer to his stacks of comic books, let alone the ones that he hasn't even read yet, right? He wouldn't refer to that as a pile of shame. My wife is a voracious reader. She reads like 1 to 2 novels a week, and we have a huge library and are constantly adding to it, and that would never be called a pile of shame, right? How about unplayed video games? I'm sure there's lots of people who play video games that they, or own video games they haven't played, or unlistened to records or CDs if you collect those. My father-in-law is an oil painter. He's got like a huge stack of blank canvases in his studio. That would never be a pile of shame. Or if you're a writer, if you've got like 24 unfinished stories that you've started, right? That's not a pile of shame. No one else does this, so we don't have to do this either, right? And I think part of what contributes to it is that the hobby, what makes it really beautiful for me is that it's actually like 5 or 6 hobbies rolled into one, and there's a clear like or implied progression, right? There's collecting the miniatures, there's assembling the miniatures, painting, basing the miniatures, writing up lists for rule sets that you learn playing the games, writing backgrounds for the armies if that's something you're into. So there's really something for everybody, and that's what I find so cool about it. But I think that also creates kind of undue pressure. Maybe we put pressure on ourselves because of that implied progression that, ooh, we feel I've got to move it to the next phase, right? I've got to build these miniatures. Oh, I've got to paint these. Oh, I've got to learn this new rule set in order to play with them. I have to justify it. And again, I think we do this to ourselves, and we don't have to. You have to maybe view each phase as its own legitimate independent hobby, that just buying and collecting miniatures, built or not, is a legitimate hobby, right? Painting miniatures, that's a legitimate hobby. Playing with miniatures, that's a legitimate hobby, but they're separate, right? I understand they're adjacent, they're related to one another, and they clearly flow, but they don't have to. And you don't have to, again, assign that value to it, because again, like where does the logic stop to, where if it's a pile of shame when it's a pile of unbuilt miniatures, how about if it's built but not painted? Right? How about if it's painted but not to the standard that you want? Or if it's painted to the standard that you want, but you don't play enough games with them yet, right? Is it still a pile of shame? How about if you play the games but you haven't written the background for the army yet? Is it still a pile of shame? No. So it doesn't have to be a pile of shame when it's an unbuilt collection of miniatures either. And the third point I wanted to share, because I saw this come up a couple of times in the comments too, is that because this is a relatively expensive hobby, I think many of us feel the need to justify the expenditure. And I also think that's faulty logic, because really the only question we should be asking ourselves, or questions we should be asking ourselves, is can you afford it, one? And two, do you want it, right? And I understand there's nuance to both of those points, but that's very broadly what we're doing when we're making purchases, or should be doing. We should all live within our means. So if you have to justify the expenditure by saying that this is worthwhile if I assemble these miniatures, you're doing it wrong, right? There is, again, value in the ownership of the miniatures. And yeah, is it cool if you build them down the road? Is it cool if you paint them down the road? Absolutely. But as I just said, treat that as like your other hobby, right? Enjoy the ownership of the models, the purchasing of the models. That is a legitimate hobby. If you can afford these models unbuilt on sprues, it's no different than if they are assembled. It's the same value proposition to you as a wargamer. And maybe it's a little new age, I don't know, but I also, like, while I love beautifully painted models, I really do enjoy, maybe there's nothing quite as beautiful to me as a unbuilt sprue of miniatures, because there's just infinite possibility at that stage. And that's something about this channel, like I really do just film myself kind of doing what I'd be doing anyway. And even in my review videos, I really do that. Like, I'll just pull out sprues and stare at them, at all the details of them, and just think about the thousands of different configurations that I could make with it. And in that state, I don't know, maybe like, I guess it's a little bit too spiritual or philosophical, whatever. But to back up to the earlier point, there's value in the thing as it is. You don't have to worry about getting into the next phase. That will happen when it happens, and just enjoy it as it is, as part of your collection as unbuilt miniatures. So in summary, again, I wanted to keep this one quick, deliberately, because I can kind of ramble for hours on subjects like this, but stop beating yourself up. No one else is going to come for you and state that you've got such a pile of shame there, or beat you up. You're beating yourself up, and you don't have to. Be kind to yourself. Collecting and owning miniatures is a legitimate hobby, and that's something that you should work on accepting and realizing that just plastic sprues of miniatures are a collection, and that's okay. There's inherent value in them as unbuilt sprues. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to build them. You don't have to paint them. You can if you want to, but you don't have to, and you should take that pressure away from yourself. I saw a quote on Warseer many years ago, back when I was still on Warseer, that went something along the lines of, the moment a wargamer paints his last miniature, they cease to exist. And I really like that. It's fun. I want it on a t-shirt. But I was thinking about that, like, if that's true, if you subscribe to that, then I would submit that your pile of unpainted miniatures, right, that collection of unpainted, unbuilt miniatures, that's not a pile of shame. That's just an insurance policy. So anyway, as I said, be kind to yourselves. Appreciate you guys dropping by for this one in the meantime. Hope you're all well. Until next time, happy gaming.